realfaith.org.au.
I have to say my parents were slightly embarrassed about me. As from a very young kid, I hated getting a haircut. I just don't like that feeling of cold around the back of your head, and kids will say, "Oh, you had a hairy," and I just didn't want that to be the case, you know. So that was just me. It's just my individuality, I suppose. And then many years later, like decades later, I suppose, I started wearing a ponytail.
Welcome to Real Faith, conversations about the impact faith has on our lives and the challenges we go through, helping us today and giving us hope for tomorrow. That's real people, real life and real faith with Eric Scatterbo.
To call Colin Youl a bit unorthodox is an understatement. His long gray hair is tied back in a ponytail and he has an earring on his left ear. Also, because of his heritage, he wears a kilt from time to time. After 38 years teaching high school students at a Christian school, he's retired now but still is impacting young people's lives. One of his lasting legacies is taking generations of students, including my children, to Yuendumu Aboriginal Settlement, 300 kilometers northwest of Alice Springs. We'll hear about this and a whole lot more as he shares his story with us today. Colin Youl, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Eric. It's good to be here.
Glad to have you with us, and I'm looking forward to hearing the background of your life story. Obviously, you were the teacher of my children for many years.
Yes, true.
And they went on that trip to Yuendumu.
Yeah, they did, with 30 kids per trip probably.
Yeah, so over 38 years, that's a lot of
right through
students.
That time, yes.
Yeah.
Over 30 times, yes.
And I remember, changing the subject a little bit here, I remember at, I believe it was my daughter's graduation, or possibly both, you were wearing a kilt.
Yes, true.
Is that what you do every year?
True, I did. My surname is a Scottish surname, and the Scottish kilt system works on your surname.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I believe so. So when I discovered that, I decided I'd follow that up, and Youl is a set of Buchanan clan, which is a huge lowland clan, which in the days of swords, broadswords and fighting the English and speaking Gaelic, they would never have worn kilts. Only Highlanders did that.
Oh, okay.
Crazy people, cattle rustlers, you know. But Queen Victoria popularised the kilt, and everyone wears, well, many people do, and I decided I'd follow that pathway. And what do you buy a man who has everything? Well, you give him money towards his kilt. And so I got a kilt.
There you go.
And now high occasions.
There you go, like graduations.
Yeah.
Now I have to ask you, it would be very appropriate if you played the bagpipes.
No.
Okay, no. I just had to ask. Okay. All right, well, we want to find out the whole story that led up to you being a teacher for 38 years, having a huge impact on so many students' lives, including my own children as well. So where did it all start? Let's go back to where you were born and raised. What year?
I was born in 1946 in Adelaide, South Australia. I was there until I was 20. I attended Norwood Baptist Church. I was baptised at age 11. I had the idea, not out of my own head completely, of course, that you needed to make a public declaration of faith for it to really work. You know, we're all, as kids, a little bit scared that God won't recognise us somehow unless we jump through certain hoops. So at the Billy Graham Crusade in Adelaide, I went forward. I'd planned to do it, and I was ready to go, and I went and followed through on that. And I was a pretty faithful Christian, or interested in learning. Sunday school I went to really majored on teaching Old Testament history with the aid of a series of coloured slides that they had accumulated, an astounding collection. So the story of David, the story of Samuel, the story of Elijah and Elisha, the Exodus, a lot of Old Testament stories, and some New Testament like parables, I guess. I don't really remember the New Testament ones very much.
But interestingly, one of the themes in your life is your interest in history.
Yes.
So
yes.
for them to teach Old Testament history, that's something that you really enjoy.
Well, a blast from the very distant past. Public education then included a lot of ancient history. And believe it or not only did I learn the difference between Assyria and Babylon and Persia at Sunday school, but it was reinforced at school.
Wow.
In the schoolroom,
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
learned
public
about the
school.
Assyrians,
Yeah.
the Sumerians, the Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the distinction between them. And I have always been a bit of an odd fish, I guess, but I took all that so seriously, I really was earnestly concerned to not mix up the Assyrians and the Babylonians, and to know what the difference was and why and how it impacted. And at school, there was an awful lot of kind of an Old Testament crossover because this is the 1950s, early 50s, I suppose, and much of the history of the Middle East and our own heritage as so in talking marks Christian nation was tied up in understanding of the Old Testament in the same way or similar way that everyone in the street knew the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now today, if I hijacked a busload of people and held them at gunpoint and said, "Tell us your favourite parable," some of them wouldn't know one at all. In those days, people knew awful lot of strange, obscure background. There you go.
So society has changed a bit.
Yep.
Getting back to your story, you were a Christian at 11 years old,
Yep.
but then went through a little bit of a rebellious period, would you say?
Yes. Yes.
What happened?
From when my parents moved to Melbourne, I was living independently. I formed a number of unfortunate relationships, and they led me more and more away from practicing Christian faith at all.
And in school, what happened?
I failed year 10 and had to repeat. And
Why did you fail?
I failed because I was lazy. Subsequently, I've discovered I wasn't unintelligent, but I was pretty stupid. And
Please explain.
yeah, I did. I just didn't do anything that I didn't want to do. I didn't do any homework. I did English and history because they were like falling off a log. They were so easy.
Yeah.
And I shone in those classes. I got commendations from teachers and so on. Gee, your general knowledge is very good, Colin. My Uncle Arthur, bless him, had a marvellous library. And I, as a small kid, I used to pore over his history books with illustrations. And as I grew older, I learned to read the captions and to ask questions about why are these people doing these things in this episode here. By the time I got to year 10 high school, I have to say I was interested in Nazi Germany, which was my historical interest, had begun to focus on that. Ancient Egypt, footy, which is a national pastime in Australia, especially the southern states, and girls. And those
in that
four
order?
things. Yeah. No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. My Christian practice overshadowed all of those. But once that practice went out of the situation, my life became really a bit of a train wreck, to be quite honest.
So you kind of drifted away from the Lord in your late teens, early 20s?
Yep.
And eventually moved to
At the age of
Melbourne?
20, I moved to Melbourne. I moved back in with my parents. I instantly reconnected with my church, with the Baptist church that they were attending. I made a genuine and heartfelt recommitment. I think for the first time in my life, really, it was well thought out. It wasn't, being frightened because my Sunday school teacher frightened me with things and saying, well, I better do this, otherwise, God's going to get me. Instead, it was making it a commitment of my own, which is the only sort of commitment that works in the long run.
Yeah.
So, back to church attendance. I soon found myself leading the youth group at Beaumaris Baptist Church, unqualified, but because I could speak well and I presented okay, and volunteers are not easy to find in churches, and I was there, and, there I was, being youth group leader. Didn't take very long before kids would come to me and they'd say, Colin, you know about history. We're doing an essay on why did Truman feel obliged to drop the second atomic bomb? And I'd say, well, these are the factors. And they knew I was constantly spouting history. I'd just read a book on the history of modern Japan at the time. And I said, and don't forget this factor here. This was very, very important. They said, oh, okay, Colin. Off they went. All their teachers were doing the same thing at the same time, lockstep across the state. You know, they're all doing the end of World War II. And came back to me and they said, Colin, my teacher says that factor's rubbish.
Oh, you're wrong.
Yeah. And I said to them, no, it's not rubbish. It's true. Your teacher he or she is just not well enough informed about their topic.
Oh, wow.
And I was right, Eric. I remain right about that.
And you were in your 20s
at
the time.
Yeah, mid-20s, yeah.
Yeah.
And after my coming to Melbourne, I fell in with, bless him, a mentor called Harry Scott Simmons, an Anglican ex-missionary priest, Anglican priest, who was a chaplain at a major, very upper-class grammar school in Melbourne. Harry was a wonderful man, a tremendous prayer warrior. He had a shared interest in Egypt, which is how we first of all met. We spent a lot of time together, very regularly, and what a help he was. And eventually, he married Heather and me, did the ceremony, because he was qualified so to do, and he was so central in my life.
We should say, as a side note, you've been married over 50 years
Yep.
now?
Yep. 2023, 50th anniversary in August, that's correct.
Today I'm chatting with retired high school teacher Colin Youl about his colorful life journey. We'll hear more of his story, including why he has a ponytail and earring. All that and more is coming up when we return right here on Real Faith.
The Word for Today is Australia's most widely read daily devotional, designed to give you practical teaching to keep you focused on your relationship with Jesus. Read it online or subscribe to the free printed edition at thewordfortoday.com.au.
You're listening to Real Faith, conversations with real people about how God works in their lives. If you want to know more about integrating faith into your life, our website is realfaith.org.au. Just go to the website and you'll find helpful articles about the impact faith can have on your life. Once again, that's realfaith.org.au.
Welcome back. I'm Eric Scadabo, and today I'm chatting with retired high school teacher Colin Youl, who taught at Mount Evelyn Christian School for 38 years, and two of the hundreds of children he taught over the years were my children, Wanda and Johnny. Now here's more of Colin's story. So at this point, let's find out, how did you meet Heather, your wife?
As soon as I lobbed at Bowie Baps, I knew Heather. She was a very distinctive girl. She looked distinctive. She dressed distinctively. But she was 13 and I was 20.
Yeah, okay, that's a bit of an age difference.
So there was no romantic thing at all, not at all.
Yeah.
She was in my youth group. She was always a deep thinker. She is one of the most intelligent people I know. She, beyond the obvious, she would think, you know. We were kindred spirits long before there was anything romantic going on between us. And we'd spend time talking and it would be totally innocent, completely and utterly. So, you know, we grew up together maybe. I don't know. And one day when I was, what year was it? Must have been 1971. I went for a drive and I was at home by myself. My parents had gone away for a while. And I was at a loose end watching rubbish movies on a Saturday afternoon. And here was Heather walking along the side of the road. I did a U-turn. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm going to get some terps from the hardware store because I'm painting a cot." Her sister was having a baby and she needed some turpentine. And I said, "Oh, I think I've got some at my house." So we went to my house, picked up the terps, came back.
How old was she at this point?
Oh, about 16, 17.
Okay.
Yeah, 17. I think 17. She and I discussed this at our anniversary, actually. I think she was 17. Yes, that's right. And I said to her, tomorrow, that's the Sunday, I was in a small band, hopeless band, and we used to go around to church after church coffee lounges, you know. And I said to her, we're playing at Dandenong, would you like to come? And she said, yeah, why not? So off we went, Sunday night, did the gig. On the way home we stopped at a block of land that I'd bought. I'd won $6,000 on a TV quiz. I bought a block of land.
Oh, okay.
And a car.
Interesting.
From that, yeah. And history.
Yeah.
Topic, of course. And we sat on the block there and looked at the stars and talked about life, and that was okay. Hopped back in my car, drove her home. I thought, I should open the car door. So I went
Be a
round
gentleman.
and opened the door,
Smart move.
And then I thought, I should walk into the door. I walked into the door.
Another smart move.
And then it was a bit awkward, And I sort of shook hands, and that just seemed silly. So I did the thing. I took her head in my hand, kissed her on the forehead. That's a very dangerous move, Eric.
Is it?
Because within moments, we were in love with each other.
Oh.
No doubt about it. It was just, and we've never looked, have we ever looked back? Well, sometimes we have, but not seriously.
50 years of marriage. Over 50 now.
That's 71. 52 years that's been since that night.
Oh, yeah.
That magical night. And then there you go.
Oh, that's a romantic story.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing that. So at the time, you were working in insurance?
True. And because of my contact with the kids and because of Harry encouraging me to think further that maybe there was more to me academically than had so far been demonstrated in 2 tries at year 10 and a narrow pass because the chemistry teacher set the same paper 2 years running. Well done, Mr. Heinemann. I had done my year 12 at night. 2 subjects one year, 2 subjects the next. Because the idea had been put in my brain that at the age of 23 and beyond, if you did 4 subjects in 2 years, you could apply to university, and you didn't need to have a maths or science, whereas normally it was necessary. I didn't have either. But I could never think of going to university because it was...
Well, I just wanted to interrupt here and point out the irony here. You've been a successful teacher for over 38 years, couldn't pass year 10. I see the irony. But you were a late bloomer, it sounds like.
Kids are interesting, aren't they? When I taught year 11 biology, and I've done it with English too, but in particular I taught year 11 bio because I was a new teacher and I teach bio. I was the only teacher on the staff that didn't have science in their degree, and I was teaching year 11 biology.
Oh, another irony.
They used to say to me, kids would say to me, Mr. Youl, did you do biology as a student when you were at school? I said, no, I didn't. What's more, I never did year 11. Oh, they couldn't believe it.
Oh, right.
They thought,
there
was something seriously missing in my life. I had never done year 11, but I hadn't. I did year 12.
There you were.
I did year 12 bio.
Yeah. Okay, so I interrupted there. Let's get back to you go to university.
Yeah. Heather and I married in August of 73. The previous December, Gough Whitlam was elected Prime Minister of Australia, and one of his policies was that university fees were abolished. That lasted for his entire government's short and tumultuous time. And there was introduced a tertiary educational assistance scheme, which I could apply for. And we'd been married only weeks when Heather and we said to one another, should I think about becoming a full-time student at this late in my life? It was a huge step for it. And on our wedding anniversary, when we were away together, I said to her, you took a tremendous risk going along with me, quitting a stable job and a steady income for who knows what. But she said, no, Colin, I'd seen you teach. I knew you were intelligent. I knew you had teaching skills.
Wow. She believed in you.
She was an amazing person, isn't she? So that was
still is, of course.
Yeah, she sure is. Yes, she is. So there it was. I went to university and I did 4 years.
So let's just back up a little bit. So you got your qualification for year 12 about 10 years after you were high school age.
Yeah.
And are now experiencing a career change.
Yes.
In your late 20s.
I should also say, in 72, before the election actually, visited my best friend, my very best friend, a darling man called David Meadows, who was killed in a climbing accident, 78. And I said to David, you look a bit down in the mouth. What's the problem? He said, I did a Year 12 subject exam today and I think I failed. Long and the short of it was I discovered for the first time there was a subject called Biblical Studies. Mm-hmm. It still exists. It's now called Texts and Traditions in Victoria. And I wound up teaching it for over 30 years and I loved it. I loved it with a capital L. And I said to David on that night, David, if you failed, I'll do it with you next year. Mm-hmm. So it came to pass that I did it the next year.
And you loved it.
It had three components in those days. Study of Genesis 1 to 12, or 12, I think. The problem of pain, which has since disappeared from the course, and so has Genesis, actually, and the Gospel of John. Wow, that was totally eye-opening for me. As Leon Morris, a great scholar, said, the Gospel of John is like a magic pool in which an elephant may swim, but a child may safely wade. How true.
Well, what does that mean?
Well, it's easy. It's simple. It's very simple.
Yeah.
But its depth
but
is
deep.
Unplumbable. Yeah.
Oh, simple but deep. Oh,
yeah.
Profound.
In fact, I've discovered that it's frequently the case that when people are doing New Testament Greek, they're given a Greek Gospel of John because it's very straightforward, very repetitive.
Yeah.
Uses key words all the way through, very reliable.
John 3:16, of course.
Yeah.
The most famous.
Yeah, Gospel's sort of bound up in it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, we need to move along to the next part of your life.
Yeah.
You go on to become a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe this is a good time for me to ask you this, your appearance.
Yeah.
So you, as we were hearing, coming from a more or less conservative Christian tradition, but yet long hair, ponytail, earring. How did this kind of hippie-like appearance come about?
I have to say my parents were slightly embarrassed about me. As from a very young kid, I hated getting a haircut. I just don't like that feeling of cold around the back of your head, and kids will say, oh, you had a hairy. And I just didn't want that to be the case,
So from a young age, you had long hair?
As long as I can remember. Well, I didn't because I wasn't allowed to.
Oh, okay.
I was compelled.
Oh, right. But as soon as you were old enough to choose for yourself.
Yeah.
And not because you're identifying with hippies or anything.
No.
You just didn't like haircuts.
This is before the Beatles, let's put it that way.
Before the Beatles?
Yep.
Wow. So you were cool before the Beatles with the long hair.
Colin Youl, I remember one of my teachers saying, Colin Youl, when your hair gets long, you look like Elvis Presley. I don't know whether that was a compliment or not. But Mr. Campbell in the insurance office where I worked would sometimes...
Yeah, I'm just seeing the contradiction. Insurance office.
Yeah, exactly.
That says conservative, behind a desk and all that.
Yep.
Ponytail? I'm not
wrong.
seeing
I didn't have a ponytail,
okay,
right?
But long hair.
Mr. Campbell would call me into his office and said, Colin, here's $2 out of petty cash. Either go and get your hair cut or don't come back.
Oh.
And I thought, no, I can't afford to what would you say, the reputation of someone who got fired from, so, I went and got my hair cut.
Yeah.
I'd have a haircut and I'd be in tears afterwards.
Really?
Yeah, I would.
You really hated
literally.
it that much?
Oh, I just hated what had happened to me, yeah. So when I became a uni student, at the insurance office, I wasn't allowed to have a beard either.
We should say, yes, you have a long beard as well.
Yeah, a beard, I keep it trimmed.
Okay.
A bit. So that was just me. It's just my individuality, I suppose. When I was a student at Monash, of course, Monash University, I could wear what I liked, look how I liked.
Yeah.
As long as I didn't break any laws, and that I was delighted with that. And then when I got my job at Mount Evelyn Christian School, the school also, there were individuals who said, how come you don't get your hair cut? Some parents don't like it.
Was this 70s or 80s?
70s, late 70s, yes. And then many years later, like decades later, I suppose, I started wearing a ponytail.
Well, it lets me know you're a colorful personality. And hence, I'd love to hear about your experiences. One of the experiences we want to chat with you about is your legacy of taking students every year to the Yuendamu Aboriginal settlement north of Alice Springs. How did that come about?
When I started teaching at Mount Evelyn Christian School, MEX for shorthand, It was a pretty radical Christian school, you know. It didn't.
In what way?
Oh, it didn't have uniforms, for one thing.
And it allowed students to have teachers with ponytails and earrings.
Yeah, true. And really, the school really believed in writing our own curriculum and making it thoroughgoingly Christian. So,
everything.
Yeah. So it wasn't prayer at the start of the day and prayer at the end of the lessons or something like that. It would rather
and nothing in between.
Yeah, precisely.
Related to Christianity.
So, you know, in biology, it talked about the impact of Christian belief and thought.
Yeah, that's one of the things as a parent of students there that I really appreciated. The whole emphasis was on integrating the Christian worldview into everything. Okay, we're going to have to stop it right there because we've run out of time for the first part of my conversation with retired high school teacher Colin Youl. But we invite you to join us again next time when Colin will continue to share his story and why he was part of bringing generations of students to an Aboriginal settlement each year in the center of Australia. That's all coming up next time. Until then, I'm Eric Scadavo. So long, and God bless.
You've been listening to Real Faith, and if you have any questions or comments, you can send us a message through our website, realfaith.org.au. That's realfaith.org.au.
Real Faith is a production of Vision Christian Media.
This program is a production of Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, see vision.org.au.